This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices. You can get a special price and a 31-day money-back guarantee right now by going to pilchpoint.live/PureVPN. Well, we were just talking about devices a moment ago and making a newer device, and we have a new device to talk about.
Yes. So this is the most anticipated computing device in the last, 2 or 3 years at least, that I am holding in my hand. And it is the latest version of one of the world's and history's most popular computers. It is the Raspberry Pi 5. Just announced on Thursday. This is going to be coming out on October 23rd. There are going to be two versions initially, a 4 gigabyte and an 8 gigabyte model. And the 4 gigabyte model will be $60, which is only $5 more than the Raspberry Pi 4 gigabyte. And the 8 gigabyte will be, I think, $80, which will be which is $5 more than the 8 gigabyte Raspberry Pi 4. So, what do you get for all of that? What's better about it? Well, let me take you to, so that you may have noticed that it has a fan on it. It doesn't come with that, although there's an official one, and you really do want to use it. So, and it's hard to take off because it has like thermal pads. So I'm not going to take it off to show you. I'm going to show you a picture of the board layout because I think that will say a lot. So, so if we look here at this really nice high-res picture that I got from Raspberry Pi. I took pictures of my own, but they're not as nice. We see a few things. First of all, this is the new SoC, the new Broadcom system on a chip that they use. That's basically the CPU and GPU. The old one was a Cortex. They were ARM. They use ARM, of course. Cortex A72 quad core running at 1.8 gigahertz. This is a A76. Not really sure. 76 is better than 72, but I'm not sure like what the total improvement there is. And it is also quad core, but it is now 2.4 gigahertz. And you can overclock. I mean, you could overclock it before, but now you can overclock it to about 3 gigahertz. The GPU is now a Video Core 7 GPU that stock speed is 800 megahertz versus 500 on the prior model. And we overclocked that to 1100, but we didn't see a lot of improvements in the graphics by doing that. Actually, we didn't see pretty much any improvements in the graphics by doing that. But it is noticeably faster for a lot of tasks, but that's not all. On top of it being faster for the processor, interestingly, you'll see this little chip over here. I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, where it has a little Raspberry Pi logo on it. It is in the upper right corner. It is called the RP1, and it is an I/O chip designed by Raspberry Pi for the South Bridge. It controls the I/O for the USB 3, the dual USB 3 ports, and the USB 2 ports, and the Ethernet port. And what that allows is it allows these to have more throughput. So the USB port is actually about, even though it's the same USB 3, which is technically 5 gigabits, read and write speeds were, sequential reads and writes were about double when I compared it to Raspberry Pi 4 using the same external USB SSD. Um, it also, Ethernet though was about the same because it's a gigabit Ethernet port and I was getting about gigabit. Um, Also, it has 802.11 AC, so Wi-Fi 5, like its predecessor, but the Wi-Fi under good conditions is also about uh, double or maybe more than double the speed of the Raspberry Pi 4, simply because the Wi-Fi card has a faster interconnect to the CPU. Although I did see some interference or poor reception when I was 25 feet away from the router in my office here, where there's other electronics and stuff like that. The Raspberry Pi 4 got more bars on my network when far away. I'm not sure why. Someone else I know, Jeff Geerling, who writes about this stuff, tested 25 feet away and had no problems. So could just be interference here. Um, the You'll notice that there's with Raspberry Pi you used to have a fan. If you want, it didn't, it doesn't come with a fan, but in the prior models you could run them pretty well without any cooling at all. On this you can run it, but if you start to do anything more than idle, it will start to go up to about 80 degrees Celsius, which is the throttle point. um, so you'll want the fan, which is specific, and you can't use any of the existing third-party fans because they don't fit this layout. So right now the only one that exists is the first-party fan, which is going to be about $6. And if you're buying one of these, buy the fan. It has these two mounting holes here on the kind of upper right and lower left to pop the fan and heatsink on, and it has a dedicated 4-pin header here for the fan. Third-party fans, there maybe a third-party fan will come out that uses this header, but all the existing ones use the GPIO. Now the 40-pin GPIO is the same 40 pins, but there's some new functionality has been added for kind of when for how it negotiates kind of power when it's at a low power state, which I'll get into why you would care about that in a minute. Um, that all new fans would need to take advantage of that. I mean, new hats using the GPI would have to take advantage of that. Another thing that's kind of neat here is previous Raspberry Pis, you had to kind of try to figure out whether if someone handed it to you or you had a bunch of them, you didn't know which one had 4 gig or 8 gig or 2 gig or 1 gig. You had to try and figure it out. But here they have a little menu, little what do you call it, map on the board that tells you which one you have. You'll notice there's a PCIe ribbon slot over here on the left, which is new for Raspberry Pi. It supports PCIe 2, so not the world's fastest, and you will need some type of a hat or add-on board to actually use it. Although apparently there's a secret unsupported PCIe 3 mode or something, which allows you to get more speed that Jeff Geerling, whose work on this stuff is fantastic, managed to enable. So maybe you'll be able to get more. You would use this for an external SSD. Instead of having previously, there was a camera slot and a official Raspberry Pi like video DSI slot. Here you've got like two ribbon cables over ribbon slots that you could have dual cameras if you want, Raspberry Pi cameras. You still, from the prior model, have 2 micro HDMI ports for your video out. It supports 4K 60 Hertz on 2 monitors, although in my experience, I don't know if it will be super fast, but it will support, because I found things, I was running 4K on 1 monitor, and it was a little on the slow side for some things, particularly for YouTube. But that's another story I'll get to in a sec. But nevertheless, you can output to 2 monitors quite successfully, and supposedly also supports HDR, which wasn't supported before. charges over USB-C, and you can see there's still a USB-C port in the lower left. It actually recommends a higher wattage USB power supply than previous. Previously, you would use a 5-volt 3 amp power adapter, and you still could do that. But if you do, the USB ports will have limited output, so they won't be able to power anything more than like a mouse and keyboard. They'll only do 600 milliamps out unless you use the recommended power supply, which it does 25 watts, that's 5 volts, 5 amps, because the CPU needs more amperage. So if you give it a lower amount of amps, it's going to take it away from the peripherals. So this the final thing that is, well, the final really standout thing that is new, I'm going to show you now in person, and that is dun dun dun. Can everybody see it? It's really tiny and blurry. But if you've been following Raspberry Pi for the 10 plus years it's been around, you know that it has never had an on off button until now. That button there is the power button. It is not
Hooray!
a. So I am not as convinced as others that this was. You know what? It has its uses. So, first thing I should say is it's not a. It is. You actually will be able to program it at some point because it is a soft momentary button. It is not a hard cutoff switch, which you don't want, because if if you used it as a cutoff switch to turn off the power, then you could corrupt the corrupt the SD card. Oh, and by the way, it uses a micro SD card. This is very important. It uses a micro SD card like the prior Raspberry Pis, but the reader is faster, leading to read and write speeds that can be, I think something like 3 times as much. So, and it boots a lot faster. It went from like 38-second boot to 18-second boot on the same card. So, um, but anyway, you don't want to just cut the power off, because that would correct, just like when you just cut the power off to PC and then it says, hey, you might have corrupted the disk, and it does a disk check or whatever. So your computer doesn't want you to just cut the power. This is a computer too. It doesn't want you to just cut the power. So if it's so when you first plug it into the wall, into power, it boots itself up. I'm not sure I actually like that. I think maybe you should have to turn it on. Then if it's on and in the operating system and you hit the button, right now it's programmed to bring up the shutdown menu on the screen. And I think if you hit it like a second time, then it will initiate shutdown. But if it's shut down, but still plugged in, it's still using some power. I think your PC is still using some power too, right? When it's shut down, but you haven't turned the power strip off. And that's when you can hit this button and it'll boot up again. So, so that's the power button for you. So, obviously, I love Raspberry Pi. For those of you who haven't been, watching all of our prior Raspberry Pi coverage, this is a single board computer. This is awesome for doing things like emulation, like making a gaming arcade, or setting up a server in your house. And you could use it as a desktop computer, although albeit a somewhat slow one. It's still not, even with the higher end parts, it's still not fantastic at streaming video, for example. It's better. I was able, when running the screen at 1080p, to play a YouTube video that is 1080p 30 very smoothly and 1080p 60 pretty smoothly. But if I turn the resolution of the screen up, even leaving the resolution of the video the same, it's still and even if it was windowed and not taking up the whole screen, it was still jerky. If the screen was 4K or 2K, and I was playing a 1080p YouTube video. So, um, you know, it, um, but it's still, good web browsing, good for productivity. I don't think a lot of people are going to buy this and say, like, this is going to be my main computer here, and I'm going to use it for my emailing and web surfing and work or whatever. I mean, you could do that, and maybe it's a low cost alternative for. But even there, like, even if were trying to give a whole bunch of people computers, you'd probably give them a $150 Chromebook if you were just trying to give people affordable computers. So really, the best use of this is for projects. Making robots, making all kinds of projects around the house for Maker Faire, and industrial, companies use Raspberry Pi for all kinds of industrial projects. You hook them up and do clusters with them. Um, I haven't tested it yet, but I'm sure this is going to do a lot better on image recognition than the prior Pis because of the higher speed. So it's really cool. Big improvements in Raspberry Pi land. And I should note that it's not coming out till October 23rd. So the version of the OS that I tested on it, which is Raspberry Pi OS, but a version that's compatible with this, and they're still working on it and still working out some kinks. So the performance could even improve more between now and the release date. If you like Raspberry Pi at all, get one. If you are thinking of getting into maker stuff on a single board computer, uh, definitely highly recommended. But make sure that you get the official fan, because you really can't. So you really can't run it without it, and you probably should get the official power supply too, so that you have five amps.
Gotcha. I mean, I've been following your coverage of it. I've been following Raspberry Pi's coverage of themselves. Uh, it's definitely it's definitely a slick little machine, and a big improvement over its predecessor.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out exactly which things it does. Like, it's obviously does faster out of the benchmarks, boots
Sure.
faster, feels faster. But what my son and I were testing yesterday is emulators. We installed something called Dolphin Emulator on there to try to run, which runs Wii and N64 games. Performance was so on that. Um, but I've seen other people who, mind you, it's not been optimized for this processor, for this new processor. So we'll see. I mean, I'd like to see that. I would hope that it'll be able to do better emulation of things like the Wii. Maybe it would even be able to do a PS2 emulation, although there's not a good PS2 emulator that runs on Raspberry Pi OS right now. There's one that is abandoned and doesn't really work right now. So anyway, but there's definitely a lot of room for people to find really exciting use cases for this. And once more people get their hands on it, you're going to see more and more reasons why it's a big upgrade. The last major Raspberry Pi, the 4, came out in 2019, so people have been waiting for this a long time, and it wasn't expected until 2024. The CEO of Raspberry Pi told us and a lot of other people earlier this year that they wouldn't be launching this until 2024. So it really kind of came as a surprise when a couple of weeks ago they contacted us and said, I'll send you one under embargo for September 28th. And I think it surprised a lot of people in the community when it was announced.
Wow. It was 2019. Wow.
Spring of 2019. So it's been more than 4 years. The biggest gap between me, I mean, they've had other they've had their microcontroller board, the
Hmm.
RP2040 came out since then. The Raspberry Pi Zero 2 came out, but that's just an upgrade to the Zero and the slow, not the top of the line, not the flagship. Um, so the Raspberry Pi 400 at some point, the one that's built into the keyboard, which is basically a Raspberry Pi 4 built in the keyboard, came out. So they've had products come out,
Mm-hmm.
but their flagship model has not been refreshed since then.
Wow. I remember doing the episodes when the 4 was announced.
Right,
God, it
right.
doesn't feel like it was that long ago. Wow.
I know, but I know, but it was. And there's this opens as a journalist. This is great because it opens up a lot of doors for different things that have to change. You need the different version of the operating system, although that is backward compatible with older Pis. So you can take the card and put it in a different Pi. There's going to be a whole new ecosystem of coolers. There's going to be a whole new ecosystem of cases because the cases
Mm-hmm.
won't fit. The cases for the 4 won't fit on this. The ports are
Okay.
somewhat different location. So the fans obviously would have to change. There's going to be some new things to take advantage. There's going to be some new things to take advantage of. The dual cameras, probably the PCIe. So there's going to be a lot to learn about what you can do with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, that makes sense. As my brother is fond of saying, it's a great time to be alive. Uh,
If you're for Raspberry Pi people, yes. Everything else, who knows?
well, I imagine if stuff isn't up now, there's stuff now,
We
and
have a
there's
lot of
more
we have a
coming.
lot of articles about it. I recommend I recommend that what you do is go to tomsharper.com, and in the top nav there's a Raspberry Pi link, and that's a link to all of our Raspberry Pi coverage. We've had several articles on this. We've had our review, our story on overclocking. We put up a story yesterday on networking and how the networking performs. Um, I'm working on one about the game performance, which has been, like I said, we're still trying to figure out how much better it is than the prior model. Um, and yeah, ongoing.
It's always fun to have a new collection of things. it's
Yeah,
my it's
yeah,
my favorite it's my favorite time.
yep, yeah. It's cool. So this has been really exciting, and we are excited to see what people do with it. And I'm trying to find things cool with it that other people haven't done yet.
Sure.
Uh, you know, this is the early time. There are still people who have, they've obviously sent to a bunch of alpha testers, some prior, some major influencers, some reviewers. So there's people out there who have it and are writing about it, and we're all trying to before everyone else has gotten it, and we're trying to figure out like what are the other cool things you can do with it, what games does it run well that the other prior one didn't, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it's that mad dash time is something that I've always enjoyed.
Yep. Yeah, I need to do more dashing. I was too busy with other stuff today, but it's been dashing the last few days, trying to find more stuff, and we'll continue.
You've just been mad, no dashing.
Yes.
Uh, all right. Well, as always, Avram, I appreciate it. It's super cool. It's getting all of the information kind of condensed makes me really excited about this new hardware. As you know, I've been looking to put my hands on a couple, and I'm glad I have held off a little bit because I
Yeah.
definitely
Put
want
in
to keep
your
up.
put. Check out our article on where to buy because you can pre-order one now. However,
Perfect.
oh, this is a tip. This is a tip. Um, so I think actually people who are subscribers to Raspberry Pi Magazine, the magazines that are owned by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, can get some kind of like advanced, like jump the line a little bit or something. But
Mm.
but if not, if you're not, um, know that to buy, I recommend ordering the 4 GB over the 8. I haven't. They sent me an 8, and 8 is great, but apparently the 8s. What we're hearing from companies that are selling them is that they're not going to be able to fulfill orders for on the 8s for a long time.
Oh,
Like there's so many people ordered the 8, or stock of the 8 or whatever is lower. I don't know if it's lower, just more people ordered the 8, but they're saying that like, oh, like I think the Pi Hut or Pi Shop said something about how if you order now, you won't get it till January or something. So
okay.
we have an article on Tom's Hardware and where the places they're selling it. There aren't that many places selling Raspberry that are official Raspberry Pi sellers. Amazon is not. Newegg is not. You may find someone there selling it, but they're not an official seller. So Micro Center is though. So if you live near Micro Center, you could go there on the 23rd and try to get one. But aside from that, Pim Maroney, Pi Shop US, the Pi Hut, Adafruit, and I think SparkFun and a couple others are the majors. I recommend ordering the 4 because you'll get it sooner.
Got it. Makes sense. Appreciate the tip. And obviously appreciate all the information, and I look forward to what we talk about next time. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Piltch Point with Avram Piltch. If you did, please subscribe to our channel, and of course hit the notification bell since subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. And if you've got topics you'd like us to discuss in the future, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you don't want to follow us on YouTube, that's okay. There's a lot of other ways that you can follow our content. You can find all of that by going to plughitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all the different ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.